Anything, Todd? Oh, there we go.
There you go.
I gave a thumbs up. We're good to go.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Todd, everyone for joining the meeting today. Let me get my windows all set up here. Can everyone see my PowerPoint presentation? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. I've got two screens and I'm going back and forth and it's telling me things about notifications. Anyway, okay. Welcome to the Public Records Advisory Council's bylaw subcommittee meeting, August 21st, 2025. And if I can get it to go to the next screen, we've got I think a pretty straightforward agenda. Here it is. We'll ask the subcommittee to approve the agenda. And then the two big items to talk about today are starting the processes of discussing what a public records advocate review process looks like. And then we also want to start the process of how we want to handle and establishing some solid framework for the current and then the upcoming and future biennial reports to the legislature. So we've been tasked by our larger council body to start discussing these processes and put it down in writing. And eventually, it's kind of a three-step process for both. We'll discuss what a process should look like, and then we will put it in our bylaws, and then we will actually do it in terms of facilitating a review of our advocate and then facilitating supporting the larger council in conducting its biennial report to the legislature. So then we'll take comment. If we've got folks, I think we've got some external folks on the call, and then we'll adjourn. Any questions or proposals to change the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mark, seconded by Todd to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
I do have some discussion. I believe I'm ex officio, so I'm not voting on any of these things when it comes forward. Okay.
So noted. Thank you, Representative. Okay, I think the agenda has been approved. We will move on to the first item. So the Public Records Advocate Annual Review. Sorry, a pop-up window just came up there. Annual review process. I was looking at what it is we're charged with doing, and Mark and others, if I'm 2 days post vacation, so I think I'm here physically, but I believe the bylaws we approved earlier this year and the state law are super clear in terms of what this review is supposed to look like. I believe we've done a version of a 365 review last year. So we have precedent in terms of recent practice, but we don't, I believe, have a lot of clear direction or specific direction from the statute that we are authorized by or our bylaws as to how this goes. So my thought in terms of the timeline and what we would do today is I just kind of take it as an opportunity to throw all our thoughts out there, identify places we might go to do more research, other agencies, other bodies that have done this, and we might want to pull from. We've kind of done this already. We did some preliminary 365. We got the idea of a 365 from other state agencies. So we don't have to reinvent any wheels. But I thought today we would take a look at perhaps where we're going to go in terms of a timeline and then just throw all our thoughts out there and see what we need to follow up on. So to get us going, if that's what we're going to do, as you can see on the slide here, today's project scoping, maybe another meeting in October to take all our thoughts, see what we've drafted, and then perhaps by our December meeting, I believe we have a December meeting for the larger council, report where we are and then see where we are in terms of moving on. So questions about the timeline, push back on that timeline? Yes, Representative Anderson.
Thank you very much. I will be in Europe until October, from after Labor Day, after the special session till October 16th. So if any meeting in October, I can come after 17th and beyond.
That's wonderful.
And I suppose I could be in Cornwall and I can join one too if that's the time frame. But for me to be actually here in the state, it'll have to be the 17th or after.
Sure. So noted. I think that's fair. I've also got some commitments at the end of September that I would appreciate a little breathing room into October. So these are general. This is a general timeline, but we'll set dates.
Okay.
So if there's no questions or comments, thoughts on this proposed general schedule, I'm going to stop sharing so that I can maybe take some notes. But I want to just perhaps, I don't want to call on people if I don't have to, but if we want to go around the room and if everyone wants to kind of give their initial thoughts about what they think an advocate review process looks like. And Todd, I think perhaps for a brief second you had your hand up. Did you want to say anything before we do that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to offer some thoughts. First is actually February. So Mark has made it clear he's not going to rerun for chair after our annual meeting, if I remember correctly. I know, there's session, right, in February. And so depending on who's going to be chair and who's going to be in charge of conducting the annual review, maybe we don't want to do it during session, maybe try to get it done before the end of this year instead, regardless of whether the process is simpler or more complicated, just because we don't know the availability of whomever will be doing it during session. That's the first thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, as someone who will both be subject to this review, as well as someone who's been subject to other reviews and had to conduct other reviews, I just wanted to share some thoughts as well, which is, the Director 360 that we're going to do every 4 years to decide about reappointment, et cetera, is a detailed and complex process. It's quite time consuming, and it makes sense because of the importance of what it's for. In my experience, annual reviews have been less formal, and I don't think we should do a Director 360 every year. Even for the state that has 360s for its agency directors, it's not every year. It's like on a cycle. Every few years, directors are getting reviews. So I do think it should be simpler and easier. I also think we should leave a lot of discretion to whomever the chair is at that time. Like, do they want to just do an informal sit down chit chat? I've had those. Or do they want like a set series of questions and check boxes to go through? I've had those. So I think we should leave it somewhat up to the discretion. And finally, I think it really should just be performed by the chair or the chair and the vice chair, and not the whole council, which they could then report on the results to the council. I'm in favor of vesting in the chair or the vice chair the authority to do it. And those are all my thoughts right now.
If I can chime in, Todd, I think that's a fair approach. One of the things that I do think I've had a lot of shortcomings in my chairmanship, but one of the things that I do believe is that there ought to be a little bit more communication between the chair, the vice chair, and the advocate. And I would encourage, a half yearly sit down or something. But if we want to turn that into sort of the review process, that makes perfect sense to me as well. And I agree with you that vesting it with the chair and the vice chair as to how to do an annual review, whether it's full-blown council or just the chair and vice chair taking feedback from members of the council, seems logical to me. I would agree that because we're required to reappoint you every 4 years, that should be a far more in-depth and sort of 365 approach, or whatever the heck they call it. So I agree with the points that you made.
I do too. And my one question is, Todd, you talked about being, formal or, or semi-formal, just sitting down and talking. Do you have any preferences to which way you want to do it? Because you said it's been done both ways in your tenure.
Yeah, I mean, I think just my own personality style and how I've felt having different kinds of reviews over the years and the nature of the reviews I've given, I'm more in favor of informal. I think it should be just more of a conversation, especially if there haven't been issues. At the same time, not everyone is well versed in doing these. And at times I have felt like I could have used a little more feedback in some of those. But it's also the personality of the person doing the review obviously has a big impact on how they go. So I would say if I'm saying generally, I lean towards more informal.
Okay, thanks.
I think the only other member of the subcommittee present is Will. Emily is the one who couldn't be here, and I think we got some other observers. But Will, did you have any thoughts?
In terms of format, I kind of agree that informal is probably the right place to start. I think in terms of who's responsible for doing it, I like having the chair be the lead there. I think if there's a concern on the part of the PRAC about the review, there should be the ability for members of the PRAC to escalate the review, to sort of open it up to more than one individual. I don't think we have a mechanism for that. I'd be happy to assist in creating one, but that's kind of what my response is based on what we've discussed today.
If I could piggyback on that, I do agree that feedback from members of the council is an important component of this, and my hope would be that the chair and vice chair or whoever's leading the annual review would seek that input. I think that that's without necessarily formalizing something like that, which I do think we should do, is formalize that the chair and vice chair should seek feedback from members of the council. I do agree that this being done informally with feedback from members of the council, but giving the chair and vice chair discretion makes sense to me. Again, I don't think there are any bad ideas. I also agree that it's going to be sort of up to the chair and their process, how their own mind works, whether it's going to be formal, informal. I'm more of the informal type, as you folks have probably gathered by now. And so that was the way I like to do it, but there's no right or wrong way, just so long as it gets done.
Will.
Thanks for that, Mark. If folks are interested in reading examples for how a similar type of review is done, the different public bodies around the Portland area have created different types of review groups. Oftentimes, these groups are created in IGAs, finance IGAs for revenue sharing and using certain types of public funds. I'd be happy to pull some of the language from those IGAs and circulate that so that people get a sense for some of the mechanisms, both for conducting an informal meeting, but also where a party is interested in putting something on the record, usually in writing, how that type of thing is accomplished. But if folks want to see examples of this type of a meeting and a review, I'd be happy to circulate some of those.
I'd welcome that, Will. And I believe, before I launch into what I believe is a summary, Todd, I'm not missing any other members of our subcommittee at this point, right?
Nope, Emily's the only member who's not here today. Everyone else is.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with what you've all said. I'm hearing unanimous support for supporting and facilitating a less formal process led by the chair, vice chair, with discretion to make it as simple as a conversation, reporting back to the council, or involving further members of the council as necessary. So I hardly agree with what we've all articulated to this point. And Will, I heard you express interest in helping draft language. So my proposal, unless someone objects to my summary that we're all on the same page on this, Will, why don't you and I take a stab at drafting language that we want to put in the bylaws. And I don't know your timeline. We heard mid to late October is when we might next meet. So for this public records advocate piece, why don't Will and I try to hammer out some very simple, brief language for the bylaws that we can then review in our next meeting in October. And if that seems to be good with folks, maybe that would be enough direction for the current chair, vice chair to do a review. And then as was expressed interest earlier, maybe we can get that process wrapped up and reportable by the council's meeting in December.
That's perfectly agreeable to me, Scott. I think that's great. My only request is that this language that we include would encourage the chair and vice chair to seek input and participation or input from members of the council, just so that everybody feels as though they have some input into that process, and then I'd just leave it at that point, and largely give some discretion to the chair and vice chair in this process, because we know life happens and people have different ways of operating. So I don't want to tie anybody's hands, but I would also encourage that we get additional input from members of the council, whether they are voting or non-voting members.
In the vagaries of my mind, I was thinking similar language, Mark, in terms of based on what I've heard.
Even though I'm a non-voting member, I certainly do not mind giving my opinion on anything. So I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. Two quick questions before I think we might pivot from this conversation. Will, you may have shaken your head and I was taking notes. You're good working, you and I working out some initial language for the bylaws. Does that work for you, Will? Yeah, okay, good. Great, well then we'll work on that. And then the other piece of this, I think we can probably get a sentence or two put together, in the next couple of weeks and have ready for a meeting in October. I think that's fine. If that comes together, Mark, as chair, do you feel comfortable that you could potentially use that language or conduct a process perhaps in November in sufficient time? I guess Todd too. Mark and Todd, do you feel like a review could be done in November to be reportable to the full council in December? Your schedules look good in November?
If you create a calendar that does that, we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I operate.
I'm sure we can find time.
If it's not on my calendar, it's not going to get done. But if it's on my calendar, it will get done.
Okay. Because it could be a somewhat aggressive agenda based on the time of year we come into around then. But we're going to be optimists today, and we will move forward with that. So
just one quick question, and I apologize. I do want to be sure that we differentiate the 360 review from the annual review as well.
Yes.
And I guess my question is to Todd, when did we conduct the 360 review? Was that in 23?
No, wait. No, it was last year.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
24.
good to know. Yeah, that's okay. Good. That's good to know. Because I do think we want to be sensitive to that that more formalized review. Knowing that we did it last year, it seems to me that this one won't be as important as, say, the second year. So anyway, I'm glad that we've recently completed that 360 review, because that was far more involved and detailed and laborious, if you will.
Yep. Todd?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I think we should just specify in a year that, a 360 review will be conducted. Then we don't do maybe this sit down.
That's right. That's right.
Look, I had a supervisor, I won't say where or when, but I would sit down with him and he would say, "This is your annual. Boy, you don't cause any drama, so thanks. See you next time." And it was like as easy as that, because I'm not patting myself in the back, but like the work and my behavior at work spoke for itself. And given that the advocate will be, in addition to obviously the 360, at least twice a year, I give the advocates report on mediations and trainings and stuff. So it's not like each year you wouldn't be going into the review without information that you needed. And that's why I think that wiggle room is helpful, because whomever is conducting already have a lot of data and can choose to drill down more formally, or, just tell me I'm not causing drama and we're good to go until next year. So whatever works.
I had the thought too, Mark, about differentiating the annual review versus 360. And I know the 360 is in the bylaws already in terms of the hiring recruitment process. So there's a chance that we might want to add a word or two to differentiate that part of the bylaws. But yeah, totally agree. All right. Advocate review. I feel like we've got a good direction on this. Any further thoughts, comments? Okay. So the next one is perhaps it's a bit different of a subject matter. Let me pull up this again. So I will change that. Go here. Okay, so the other piece we were charged with looking at by the full council was the biennial report to the legislature. And I will admit that of the two, this is the one I'm least familiar with. I've been on council long enough to, I think, see at least one of these, or one of these talked about. So in this conversation, I will definitely defer to Mark and others who've been on longer. And the projects today, I think we throw everything at the wall like we just did, get our thoughts out there, and then if I recall correctly, the next Todd just put the ORS out there. Thank you in the chat. The next biannual report to the legislature is not due until December 26th. Am I right in that? So
Yes.
This process, we have more time to converse, and probably there's less urgency in getting something done this calendar year. So I will stop sharing that. And then Mark, if you want to lead us off.
Well, sure. I wrote the last report.
Yep.
And I think it's fair for the chair and the vice chair to be responsible for the production of that. I also believe that we've had to do two of these, Todd, if I recall correctly. You wrote, I think you wrote the first one.
I guess there's been four so far, starting way back in 2018.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Because you're absolutely right. I do remember that. So I believe the first two were written by the advocate themselves.
Sorry, I was just trying to. I know. So if I recall, in 2018, I had just started. Ginger was still here as the advocate.
Yep.
Ginger and the council together decided they were going to do their report, which is all the basics, and then Ginger appended that memo that became so commented on afterwards. But that was more of an addendum. It wasn't the actual report. Maybe she drafted the actual report too, but the report itself, I think, was more sort of the nuts and bolts like we've been doing ever since. So yeah, that's like the format that's evolved more or less.
I agree, Todd. And I do think that the format of the report has largely, I mean, we haven't formalized that format. And we may want to, I don't know. I suppose it's up to the council as to how they want to do it, but I would suggest and recommend that the chair of the council, with the help of the vice chair, conduct or write the report. I don't think it is a little bit time consuming, but it's not very hard to do. It really isn't. And I do think that to some extent the advocate, he or she, should also be assisting in that effort, because I do believe that the advocate, they're the full-time person, they know the nuts and bolts, whereas this is more of a voluntary council. And I just think that because Todd is living and breathing it, Todd or the advocate needs to be a part of that process as well. And that's really all I would have to say. I don't think we have to formalize it with a great amount of detail. I just think that you need to assign the responsibility to somebody, and probably use the format that we have used in the previous reports, if that makes sense. That's really all that I have to share from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Todd?
Yeah, jumping off of what Mark said, maybe it could be something along the lines of, pursuant to the statute, every even year, the chair shall draft the report as required with the assistance of the vice chair and the advocate. And then we could potentially leave it up to the discretion of the chair after that, how much they want to put in, because in the past, it's been something like new members work of the council since the last report, goal for the upcoming period until the next report. And that's been sort of the larger generalized format. And they could play with that maybe and make it, if they want to go into more detail or add other things, that could be at the discretion of the chair. But I think those elements I mentioned meet the statutory requirements, and we haven't had pushback on it so far. It's been well received, if read at all, by the legislature. Maybe Rev. Anderson could tell us more about that. But it goes where it's supposed to, and no one's had an issue with it since 2018.
Representative Anderson, you're muted.
Muted, hold
You're
on.
muted.
I think I have a 1 by my hand raised, so I guess I'm going now.
Yep.
To me, it will be formal once it's presented to the larger committee, and the larger committee would adopt the report and the recommendations of the review committee, that whether it's the chair and the vice chair, or the chair, the vice chair, and another person. So that's how we formalize things. And I think that all of us here, if things are going south, we'll know that, and then we'll do what we can. I mean, and I don't have any concerns that it will go south, but I think we should be informal until it's not, and that's when it's adopted by the larger committee, and then that becomes a formal thing. I will tell you that I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes, but Andy's here. And if Andy has to leave, I've got a couple interns here who might sit in on this, but based on everything I know of the committee and the public advocate himself, I don't have any concerns about, I'm not going to be here to give my input on this. I think you guys are all moving in the right directions, and I appreciate the work. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Representative.
Yeah. Bye.
Mark, you're muted.
The only other thing I would add is that the report should, and I believe we do this, but I want to just make sure that we summarize the work of the advocate over the previous couple of years, how many trainings, how many mediations, how many were successful, how many ended up, whatever. But I do think that it's important for us to ensure that there are some metrics in there, number one. Number two, Todd, you're going to have to help us on this, but your key performance measures, how can we address the key performance measures in the report? Is that something that we want to do? I think that is something that we want to do, because that report could very well help us actually measure those key performance measures, if you will, and report to legislative fiscal. I'm talking a little inside baseball right now, but I think Todd understands what I'm driving at here, is that in the appropriations or the Ways and Means process, each office has to have key performance measures that their performances are obviously being measured against. And so trying to include that information within the report, I think, is also going to be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's great, Mark. The only thing I would say is, we obviously report on the status of those when we do our budget presentation every 2 years. And so the information we have at the time of the biennial report might be a little stale, because it could be like the previous report. But I think even demonstrating, like, on such and such date we testified, and here's where we're at, and we're continuing to work to meet those goals, I guess that's sufficient. It might be a little redundant, but it doesn't hurt to keep saying what we're doing, I guess.
Well, my point is, I think here that we're cognizant of the key performance measures, and we're always looking at them. It's not like, oh, let's scramble every 2 years and make sure that we're doing our key performance measures. It just keeps those measurements within our periphery as we continually operate, I think, is really the point that I'm trying to make.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Todd. Will, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay. I think we heard from the representative. Andrew, if you had anything you wanted to add at this juncture. No, you're good. Okay. I was just gonna. I'm in agreement. I think with the direction we're going as well. I wanted to share real quick what the bylaws that we adopted last year currently say in terms of this annual report, and I believe this is basically statute, right? So it's in Section B or Article 2, Section B. Line 6 here, every 2 years submit a written report to the Governor and Legislative Assembly describing the council findings, recommendations. Based on what I'm hearing, I think maybe we just add a sentence here that kind of lays out, as was proposed by Mark and Todd, that, you know, maybe the chair and the vice chair take the lead on writing this report with input from the PRA, something along these lines, and we can wordsmith how detailed we want to be, perhaps at our next meeting or whatever. But in short, I just wanted to highlight that there is a section here already for this, and we could just maybe beef it up a little bit to include this process. And then any objections or thoughts about that? I saw a thumbs up from Mark, assuming that sounds good. And then I just wanted to real quick, maybe this is a clarification for myself. Section 6 calls out the council report, I think. Section 7, the second sentence of this here calls out or suggests that the council provide assistance to the advocate on the advocate's reports. I know, Todd, you mentioned your budget reports. Are we talking about two different reports in terms of the council's biennial report versus the advocate's report, or are these kind of the same thing?
That's a good question. I know over the years we constantly say the advocate's report and we're talking about the biennial report, but that's actually the council's report, and I have been trying to correct that language. So I think we're there now on that. I don't quite recall what this report refers to, but I know Mark has wanted me to be a little more closely, like talk to the council a little bit more in the budget development process. We do always send updates, but I don't know if, Mark, you want to talk to a more formal vision for that, and if that's what we're talking about here, because that's really our only official report to the legislature is our budget presentation every 2 years. So that's all it could refer to here if we're talking about the advocate's office specifically.
You're muted, Mark.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll confess I'm a little confused about that as well. Todd, you are correct that I would like the council to get a briefing from the advocate's office on budget development, right? And I think that is something that the council needs to be aware of, because without a sufficient budget, you can't sufficiently fulfill your duties. And so I think that that's a very important conversation that needs to take place on a biennial basis. I don't think that it needs to necessarily be formalized in our bylaws unless people feel that it should be. Maybe we do want to put that in our bylaws because if for whatever reason we have a PRA change at some point in the future, it would be good to have that direction for the PRA in place, because I think it can be easily lost, right? Todd, I mean, we didn't get a report from you prior to you submitting your budget requests, and that was probably my fault that we didn't have that discussion. But I think it's an important discussion that the council needs to be aware of to ensure that the PRA is being adequately funded to fulfill the role that they have to play. That's all I have to say about that. So I didn't answer your question, Scott. I did what lobbyists do the best, and that is answer the question without answering the question.
I think Todd might have asked the question, but I feel like I'm in an okay place to summarize. If people are, I think there was that last discussion, you guys were talking about the difference of the reports, and Mark was advocating that the council get more of a budget report. I think we'll be under the hood on this section, so there's an opportunity to add language if we want to entertain that. So, so similar to what we did in the last section, I think we have consensus here on perhaps adding a few words or maybe a sentence to this section 6 here in the bylaws, Article 2. So does anybody have interest or time in taking a first crack at that section to add the language for the report? Okay, you dragged me into it. I'll try to take a red line at it and see what we can do. You guys are all very good at that. But anyway.
I think
okay,
you're very good at doing it yourself, Scott. That's why you've written most of it. I think that, the copyright should stay with you for the time being.
I don't wait long enough when there's those awkward pauses and no one says anything.
Yeah,
I just jump right in. Okay, so to summarize, we're going to look at beefing up the language during that section, add a little clarity. The chair, vice chair, I took notes about this. We'll throw it out there and then we'll wordsmith it a little bit. And this one we can let go into the next year in terms of when we actually start having a report written. But it perhaps may be that we'll have two sets of changes to our bylaws to recommend to the full council to consider in December. So that'll be good. So with that, anything else on the biennial council report? Nope. Then we'll go back to the PowerPoint, which is sort of anticlimactic at this point, I suppose. But every time I do that, I got to drag you guys back over here and then go back here. So we're at the section of our meeting where we're open to taking public comment. And this to make sure we do have folks, I don't know if anyone wants to talk, but if you are interested in speaking, this is the Public Records Bylaws Subcommittee. So you should probably, you're certainly welcome to make comment on whatever you'd like, I suppose. But the work of this subcommittee is on the bylaws and the topics we've addressed specifically today. So does any member of the public who is with us today wish to make any comments to the subcommittee? There's a comment in the chat from Claire, just clarifying they have no comments and that they're from Department of Human Services. Thank you for joining us today, Claire. Appreciate your attendance. Going twice, thrice. Very good. I see no public comment. So next step, almost last step. Next meeting date, it sounded like there was support for a mid-late October meeting. Todd, can you perhaps once we've got, well, we can probably set the meeting. Are you good sending a doodle poll out in the next week to get something set for the end of October?
Sure, although I wonder, do you think that's too soon? Like, I know there's some benefits to securing it well in advance, but everyone's schedule changes so much too. But if you think it will work, I'm happy to do it.
I would have no problem waiting into November, but my one concern is I want to make sure you and Mark have time to get.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I meant sending out the doodle poll. Like sending it early has benefits to lock it in, but then everyone's schedules change so much. Sometimes I like to do it closer in time, but whatever you think works, I'm happy to. I don't think there's a right answer.
Would sending it out the first week of September be a good compromise, a little closer?
Yeah, sure. I will make note to make that happen.
Perfect. Mark, you're muted.
Yeah, there's always one of us, right? The purpose of the meeting in late October, November would be to sort of finalize our recommendations. Is that correct, Scott?
Correct.
And then go ahead.
To review we're going to make some proposed bylaw changes, clarifications, adding some language for both these processes. Once we're all copacetic on that, then in particular, I think that would be the direction the chair, you and Todd would need to do an annual review. And then we bring both the wording of the bylaw changes and any report you guys have from the annual review to the December meeting. So yeah.
Okay.
So I think the October meeting, if nothing revelatory comes up and we want to drastically change what we're doing, that could probably be a 30-minute meeting, I would imagine, because it's just confirming language that hopefully we'll see. Everyone get a chance to see before, and then just saying good luck, Mark and Todd, in getting the review done in November. So I think it should be boop, pretty quick meeting.
So help me understand Dan, because my memory is terrible here. Have we as a council adopted the bylaws, any bylaws yet? Yes, we have. Okay. So this is just a addendum to the existing bylaws to ensure that we're sort of creating a watertight bylaws that will help us with all facets of the work of the council and the advocate, right?
Correct.
So we're finally, I think the light is at the end of the tunnel on our bylaws. It's only taken us 8 years. Good job.
Yeah, we got to the big hurdle of adopting back on June 2nd.
Great.
This is just out of that. There were 2 processes that were flagged that we wanted to make sure we got in the bylaws. Todd?
Thank you.
Well, not to play devil's advocate, but bylaws are a living document, right? We may need to change stuff over time. One thing I was going to say that I just realized based on what Mark was saying was, so we're just a subcommittee. Even if we approve the form of the review so that it can be conducted before the annual meeting for the full council to vote on it, then that means it's not our official direction for performing an annual review. But I think Mark, as chair, could probably still choose to institute one anyway to comply with our KPMs, and this would be the first one under an unofficial scheme, and then I guess after the annual meeting we'll have an official scheme moving forward. So if that makes sense, and no one's worried about that, I'm perfectly fine with it too. I just wanted to point that out.
I feel like that's exactly what the group is sort of coming to agreement on. I kind of feel like I feel like there'd be really small risk of the council objecting to an annual review happening pre-bylaws writing it out. And I feel like this subcommittee being tasked with this process is also the council saying we want this to happen. So I think there's support for it.
Yeah, just let me make sure though I understand something here, Todd. We are planning on having a full PRAC meeting prior to December, correct?
Oh, that's true.
Was it November, December? I don't remember even what dates I put in the doodle poll right now. And I'm still waiting for more answers to know where we're at. Do you guys remember who filled it out? I could pull it up.
I filled it out. I don't recall when it was.
If it was in the last 2 weeks, I may not have seen it yet because I've not been here. But wasn't it November? Did it say November-ish or did it say October-ish?
It's amazing that none of us can remember.
Hey, there's a public record of it somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, my point here was that on the next full PRAC meeting, an agenda item I'd like to perhaps propose is that the chair and vice chair get the approval to conduct an annual review of the PRA so that we check that box, despite the fact that we won't have had formal bylaws in place to that effect. That way we can get the permission of the council to do the annual review while still in the process of formalizing or updating our bylaws. If that makes sense.
If we have a meeting, I think we have enough consensus from this group today without having written the words. But if there's a council meeting before November, I think that sounds great, Mark. No reason not to.
So Todd, if you wouldn't mind just including that in our next full council meeting, just as one quick agenda item of getting approval from the council for the chair and vice chair to conduct an annual review.
Will do.
And it would be my intention for that to be an informal sit down.
Sounds good
Unless
to me.
the vice chair feels differently, of course. All right, great.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Todd. So that's perhaps steps at the council level. As a reminder for the subcommittee, next meeting, Todd will send a poll out in September. Will and I are going to hammer out some bylaw language based on this conversation. Anything else for the good of the order today?
Well, actually, sorry, I'm just looking back at my email about the doodle poll. We're actually trying to pull one together for a short September meeting.
That's right. That's the one for Shasta. She wants to do her survey, right? So
right.
That's when I want to get that approval in that short meeting so that we can just go ahead and do this, presuming that the bylaws aren't going to be adopted by the full council until, some date in the future.
Right. Okay. So I will add that to the September agenda.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I knew there was something out there, Todd. I just couldn't remember.
Very good. Anything further to discuss?
Scott, just want to thank you for all the work you've put into the bylaws. I don't think this could have run much more smoothly, and appreciate all the hard work you put into this. And Will, thanks for volunteering to help Scott out with this.
Here. Thank you, Will, and thank you for the remarks, Mark. Appreciate that. Hearing no further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded, moved by Mark, second by Will to adjourn. Any further discussion? All in
Have a
favor,
great
say
day,
aye.
everybody.
Take care.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We're adjourned. Good night, everybody.